Donald Trump commuted the sentence of Alice Marie Johnson today. And if you don't know her name, you likely know this one, Kim Kardashian West, who personally went to the White House last week to plead Johnson's case to the president. Johnson has served more than 20 years of a life sentence for a first-time drug offense and a nonviolent one at that. A White House statement today noted that while this administration will always be very tough on crime, it believes that those who have paid their debt to society and worked hard to better themselves while in prison deserve a second chance. To that end, CNN is reporting the White House has assembled paperwork to pardon dozens more people in the days and weeks ahead. And then, of course, there was that Monday morning Trump tweet claiming that he has the absolute right to pardon himself, certainly getting plenty of practice. But even members of his own party seem hesitant about that idea.
Do you believe that the president has the power to pardon himself?
I don't know the technical answer to that question, but I think obviously the answer is he shouldn't, and no one is above the law.
I don't think the Constitution was set up to have a system in place for the president to pardon himself.
If I were president of the United States and I had a lawyer that told me I could pardon myself, I think I'd hire a new lawyer.
Joining me now are two of my favorite lawyers. Former U.S. Attorney Michael Sullivan, who was appointed by President George W. Bush. He's now a partner at Ashcroft Law. Good to see you, Michael.
Good to see you, Jim.
Former Assistant U.S. Attorney Dan Small, who has worked with both Robert Mueller and Rudy Giuliani in a past life. That's quite a perfecta. He's also the only lawyer to have defended two governors on corruption charges. He's now a partner at Holland and Knight. It's good to see you too, Dan. Thanks for being here. You know, my understanding is there's a process. The Justice Department has an office, goes through a vetting process to propose pardons to the president, which he can either reject or not. Now it's Sly Stallone calls you on the phone, and Kim Kardashian shows up at the White House. Does that not trouble you as a pretty traditional law enforcement type?
I suspect that there have been many instances prior to this administration where somebody who was friendly with the president reached out to the president and said, this person deserves a pardon. The process that's in place, it's a process that was developed, by the Department of Justice. It's not required under the Constitution.
But you're pretty much a traditionalist. It doesn't bother you that he appears to be circumventing that process, and at least from what I can read, every single pardon case?
Well, it's a government-created process that the government essentially can either utilize or not utilize. I suspect the vast majority of pardon requests will still go through the normal process, which is the pardon attorney within the Department of Justice.
By the way, I should be clear, this Alice Marie Johnson, I have to say, appears to be a perfect candidate for a pardon. So putting that aside for a second, I was reading what the criteria historically, remorse is generally a criteria. Joe Arpaio, the former sheriff, has not shown remorse about anything. Are you any more troubled about the lack of process than your partner here is?
Well, I've known Mike a long time, but we're flipped on this one. He's a traditionalist, but thinks it's okay to ignore tradition. I think Trump has turned the pardon process into a way to reward friends like he's used every other part of government, and it's an abuse of the process, and it's wrong.
But by the way, he has full power to do this. There's no, the only limitations from what I understand are presidential pardon. He can't pardon something to get, even if he can pardon himself, which we'll get to in a minute, you can't do it to get yourself out of an impeachment, and it can only be for federal crimes. I'm right about that.
Sure.
Those are the reasons. But, the thing, it's not only helping friends, but also it appears to me getting back at enemies. It's not, I don't think, coincidental that people like Scooter Libby had a Comey connection and a Patrick Fitzgerald connection, who obviously was assigned to the case by Comey. Same with Martha Stewart. Same with Rod Blagojevich, who were apparently on the queue. Is that usual, or is this untraditional too?
No, it's completely untraditional. Mike is right. Sure, people will call and say, gee, golly, but there is a process. He's gone way beyond he's ignored the process and used it as a tool to help his friends and hurt his enemies.
Yeah, that is factually accurate, even if it's perfectly okay. He's sending a message to the Comeys and the Fitzgeralds of the world.
I don't know if he's sending a message, to be honest. I can't jump to that conclusion based on the fact that he's pardoning Scooter Libby. Scooter Libby, after his sentence, essentially was already imposed, and I think a portion of his sentence may have been commuted previously. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is, friends of past presidents have received pardons. Didn't Bill Clinton's...
Mark Rich.
Didn't he pardon his own brother in terms of an offense?
I don't know if Roger Clinton was on the list.
And Barack Obama, President Obama, pardoned friends as well.
Well, let me try another one in terms of sending a message. It appears to me as a layperson, even though I'm sort of a lawyer, but not in your league, that the message being sent here is to the Cohens and the Flynns and the Manaforts of the world, hey, boys, stay loyal. Don't worry, I'll stay loyal to you. And to me, as a non-former prosecutor, that's almost obstruction of justice to me. I mean, can that be, by the way, if I'm right about that, and if Bob Mueller agrees with me, and I have no idea if he does, that that is part of the motivation for these pardons, to send a message to people who are now either indicted or at least before Mueller, can that be part of an obstruction case that Mueller constructs if he thinks he can prove that that's what's behind the president's pardon decisions?
Sounds a little complicated in terms of the way you just described it.
Not for Bob Mueller.
But maybe not for Bob Mueller, and maybe not in terms of the public, the media's interest with regards to spinning it that way there. But you're starting from a premise that the president has done something wrong that he wants to obstruct an investigation from doing.
Wait a second. When you were a U.S. attorney, Michael, and I only knew you from afar at that part, would you not be pulling your hair out if you had a bunch of people before you who had some involvement with the president, and the president of the United States was pardoning and pardoning and pardoning? You clearly, I believe, would have concluded he's trying to send a message to the very people who I'm proceeding against, wouldn't you?
But who has he pardoned that's been part of the Mueller investigation? Nobody.
I understand that, but does he have to do that to be sending a message? I mean, are you with me or are you with him on this?
Absolutely. I understand that.
Absolutely which?
Absolutely
Both?
with you. No,
Okay.
Absolutely with you.
So make the case better than I did.
He's sending a message. No president has pardoned so many people so early in the administration, and he's clearly just softening the ground so that when he does pardon people who are convicted for whether it's money laundering, if he pardons people. So number one, it won't be as jarring to people because they will have heard about all these pardons. And number two, absolutely, he's sending a message to the Paul Manaforts of the world. Hang in there, babe. I got your back.
You know, there's sort of an irony here, as you were self-aware enough to point to a minute ago. I would bet the likes of you, Dan Small, would ordinarily say presidents shouldn't wait till the ends of their terms in the waning days. If people deserve a pardon, they deserve a pardon. And I assume all three of us would agree that Alice Marie Johnson, even though I find it weird that Kim Kardashian is her advocate, she is a classic person to receive a pardon. Not 7.5 years from now, or 7 years from now, but early on in the presidency, no?
Well, I don't know the detail.
But as much as you know and I know.
I don't know why she wasn't pardoned in the last administration. You know, the pardon office goes through a process, and it includes, as you said, have they shown remorse? Have they been rehabilitated? What's going on here? She hasn't qualified yet, and I don't know the details of it, but whether or not she ultimately should get a pardon, it still should go through the normal process of government.
Which it did not.
And not be a reward to a pal who comes to the White House.
So, Michael, is there any part of what's happened in the pardon process yet under this president that troubles you, or you're
I haven't seen anything at this point in time that I would say would be troubling in any respect at all. And I'm not sure that Dan is accurate, that there's been more pardons in this administration than any previous administration.
At this stage of the administration?
I'm not sure that that's accurate. Maybe it is. But you'll look at it, and the point you made is that presidents at the end of their presidency pardon boatloads of people. And people scratch their heads, and some of those are friends of the president.
By the way, Deval Patrick admitted to me when he was pardoning people at the end of his second term, he was very candid and said, it is very hard to do this until you're on your way out the door. And I'm paraphrasing. I want to talk about another thing here. ABC News is reporting the Inspector General in the Justice Department is about to release a report criticizing Comey, particularly his handling of the Clinton email probe. It seems to me that this is the perfect thing for the president to use to continue to undermine the Mueller investigation. The more he is able to criticize Comey and has an allegedly impartial ally, the more it trickles down into the so-called corrupt witch hunt, as he calls it, that is being conducted by Mueller. Would you not agree with that?
I would agree, but I would say this. Comey deserves to be criticized. I mean, he did a horrible disservice to the FBI, and the Inspector General is apolitical. The person has a phenomenal reputation, and if his report comes out and is critical of Comey, it's well-deserving.
Can you agree with that at least?
Absolutely. Comey screwed this up badly. He screwed it up politically. He screwed it up institutionally.
And it's going to help Trump's case against Mueller.
Now, the problem is that the two things are totally unrelated. The fact that Comey screwed up the process has nothing to do with Bob Mueller.
Well, in politics, there's a lot to do with Bob Mueller.
Absolutely.
Before you go, since you work with Giuliani, did he lose his marbles? I mean, I don't know how to put it. I mean, when you watch you're laughing too, thankfully. When you watch the lawyering that he is doing on behalf of is there something that we're missing? Is there a strategy there? Or is this just the guy who wanted to be back in the limelight and the President of the United States said, I need your help? What's your quick thought? And I want to go to Michael.
Rudy's always been a character, but this has gone way beyond character to just nuttiness.
You wouldn't hire him to represent you if you were in trouble, would you?
I might, but what did he say? He said three things. First off, the president has a right to essentially pardon himself. Yeah. He said, but the president won't exercise that because the president has not committed the crime.
But he's flipped on a whole bunch. One day he gets, no, it's just another day. Okay, we'll continue this someday.
All right. Thanks,
Michael, it's good
Thank
to see you. Dan, thanks so much
for
your time. I appreciate it.